So, I realized that in my video advocating against the police, I didn't exactly argue in favor of BLM, I just argued against the police. Black lives matter. That's not up for debate. If one were to respond with white lives or all lives matter, they are a racist piece of shit. Yes, all lives do matter. The issue is that to too many people, especially in the government, black lives don't. White lives matter is a correct statement, but much like ALM, it has been made into a deeply reactionary statement to no longer be said with BLM, but against it. However, many people say blue lives matter, which has always been pretty yikesy politically. Blue lives murder is a much better statement. Cops' lives do matter, but saying they matter because they're a cop is pretty not great. You can take off a blue vest, but one can't take off their skin color. That should be pretty obvious. Cops can stop being cops if they choose, but they don't. Anyway, this video is more advocacy than what I did for the policing video. The reason I did that is that while I have a shit ton of fun arguing against things, I wanted to argue in favor of something this time. I will inevitably have to argue against some things, but I might as well try to avoid it. Yes, BLM has become a bit more of a liberal thing than a leftist thing, but leftists should support liberal movements if we, well, support them. Oh yeah, for those of you not aware, leftism and liberalism are pretty different. Currently, the left, as a whole, wants a smaller government with more social welfare programs, and most of us hope for the end of capitalism. Liberals tend to be a lot more centrist-y, with many modern leftists being anarchists and most liberals being liberals. That's a bit of an important distinction for those who think socialism is when the government does stuff to understand. But a message to the brainlets who think we can't support Libby movements while still being leftists. You're harming the left. Oh crap, I'm going to war with Twitter tankies. Black Lives Matter was coined after the killing of yet another unarmed black man. It has some roots in the Black Power movements of the 60s and 70s, most notably the Black Panther Party.
Because of the way this society is organized, because of the violence that exists on the surface everywhere, you have to expect that there are going to be such explosions. You have to expect things like that as reactions. If you are a black person and live in the black community all your life and walk out on the street every day seeing white policemen surrounding you, when I was living in Los Angeles, for instance, long before the situation in LA ever occurred, I was constantly stopped. No, the police didn't know who I was, but I was a black woman and I had a natural, and they, I suppose, thought that I might be a, quote, militant. And when you live under a situation like that constantly, and then you ask me, you know, whether I approve of violence. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all.
To quickly say something bad about these movements, a lot of them were pretty tanky, and that's not great. But it is understandable. The Soviet Union passed a law banning racial discrimination of any kind. To be clear, the Soviet-style countries were bad. Reactionaries will take any time you mention an authoritarian thing without screaming, "Fuck this thing I clearly hate, I'm literally an anarchist," as a sign that you're an authoritarian. The Black Panther Party had a primitive version of recording cops with phones. They followed them around with guns to make them afraid to kill anyone in a black neighborhood. The party ended up being dissolved because of the CIA and FBI's counterintelligence program. The group's political ideology was Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, which, sorry, I'm not a big fan of, because I'm a libertarian commie, not an off commie.
We need an understanding of Marxist-Leninist principles so that we may put our knowledge into revolutionary practice.
That said, they actually did some really good shit, and something that the libs in the audience can appreciate is that they got the first gun control laws passed because the government was afraid of black people with guns existing. And those more fashy in the audience tonight will like that they used guns. Why do fascists worship guns? Like, yeah, it's a weapon that can be used for self-defense, but it's not a god. All I'm saying is the SRA is better than the NRA. A thing that I saw people being stupid about is the raised fist that is used by people in the BLM movement. They say it reminds them of the Nazi salute. That was the point of the Nazis making their salute that. The Nazis intentionally mimicked socialist imagery and slogans to spread their decidedly anti-socialist message. The raised fist was originally made by a commie scum like me, to be imagery for solidarity. Hitler wanted to mimic the socialists because of the appeal of socialism. we kind of owned with our imagery back in the day, and our music is still better, so at least we aren't exactly getting bad at stuff like that. There's a reason modern day Nazis dog whistle international bankers to mean Jewish people. The left hates bankers because one of our main priorities is to end capitalism, and bankers are still fundamental to that. Nazis still rip us off, and it's kind of annoying. So the recent George Floyd protest movement to protest another unarmed black man getting killed has been accused of being way too rioty. For one, isn't that kind of justified after a certain point? Like, you know, the police have an absurd amount of power. Also, nope. 93% of protests have been completely peaceful and didn't even destroy property. And most of the other 7% were either provoked by cops attacking them first, or just destroyed some property, mostly public. Flipping the police car isn't equivalent to the cops using chemical weapons banned in warfare against people for the vile crime of protesting. Burning one isn't either. I don't give a shit about property destruction if no one is harmed. An empty police station, an empty car, isn't gonna kill anyone when it's burned down. A Walmart being looted isn't gonna harm anyone other than making it so the billionaires who own Walmart aren't able to make— wait, how much was taken? About $100,000? And that number was from far-right propaganda website Daily Mail. Okay, I give you even less of a shit. This would have had to happen 1,600,000 times for it to sum up to the Walmart heirs' wealth, which they gained entirely through exploitation. I'm not advocating for anything like shoplifting. I'm saying that I don't give a shit and most likely won't ever.
Okay, but look at these businesses that got burned down.
That's clearly bad. Ooh boy, how can I argue against this one? I don't think any small businesses should be burned down because that makes it so people have no jobs. However, most of the businesses burned down came out supporting BLM after their locations were burned down. Once again, I don't support burning down a business, but don't use these to argue against a movement that the businesses you are using as a talking point support. Once again, these riots are super rare, and most happened immediately after George Floyd was killed for the crime of possibly using a counterfeit $20 bill. Now about the guillotine set up outside Jeff Bezos' house, I don't care. He could single-handedly end world hunger for years and still have enough to live an incredibly luxurious life. Jeff Bezos is a piece of human garbage, and the only reason he supports humanitarian issues is that he makes himself, and by extension his companies, look good by doing that. I wouldn't give a shit if someone who could end world hunger and refuses to is afraid for a few hours. A lot of enlightened centrists believe that the idea of Black Lives Mattering is way too radical. It isn't. I'm a bit of a radical myself, so I would support it either way. And you can trust me that it isn't. Maybe these enlightened centrists associate the movement with defunding the police. This also isn't radical. The idea that an overfunded organization that does nothing but oppression shouldn't have excess funds, and those excess funds should be spent on other things that actually help people, isn't radical. You're just a racist piece of shit who has never been disadvantaged by the police, so you worship the ground they walk on. Fuck, I'm going into arguing against shit, which is exactly what I was trying to avoid. You and a reactionary online are having an argument, let's say. This argument is very repetitive because reactionary politics are based on the same bullshit arguments being repeated 50 times. However, they say the time-tested bullshit statement, the left are the real racists, then you block them. A lot of people repeat this bullshit talking point. It's really fucking annoying. Not because it's smirked and impossible to argue against, the opposite. It's the brainlet take adopted by 10-year-olds who watch Sargon every day.
Aren't you anti-white if you support Black lives?
It's the idea that both TERFs and sexists have when you say that either women should have rights or that trans people should have rights. That somehow advocating for an oppressed group means advocating for the demise of a non-oppressed group. Supporting women's rights apparently makes it so you can't support those of men? This take is obviously bullshit. All lives matter is something I would agree with if it wasn't used to invalidate the saying Black Lives Matter. Responding with this is obviously racist. All lives mattering doesn't make it so Black lives don't. Saying Black Lives Matter doesn't make it so all lives don't. Now shut the fuck up and go back to playing Fortnite. You really shouldn't be involved in this conversation yet. Actually, any age should be able to be involved in politics, but the All Lives Matter folk clearly don't have the slightest understanding of anything more complicated than touching the heat hurts. Also, fuck Andy, no, he's a fascist and isn't a reliable news source. Sorry, he should shut the fuck up about spooky Antifa and Marxists and Black Lives Matter. Spooky.
my basic statement. Split street toy till I take the payment. Trying to set up the pier when we face enslavement. And a full blue lunches that trains the pavement. Gripping my arm around some shitty wrong. Trying to find time number 151. To forget where the mode of the clutch to come on. Hey, put down the violence. Come and slip. Get off the chain like who to get there with a magnet. Gotta go like a dollar in a crampton. Suddenly subtracted. Seeds is here. Ride calling through the weeds and flip. Remember playing off of that. And the Jesus here. We wait for the time to fight. Jesus here. Telling us to relax while the ease it in. Get breathe again. To the right is out. I'm Boots Riley, it's a pleasure to meet you. Never let that punk ass ever defeat you. Got us on the corner where I'm pleasant and see through. All y'all know man, they wanted to blink twice. In the rap on the track, in the clap on the back. Stack on the left, 100 years before I put, I believe back in the left. When they told Rose black in the back. What was your told Rick and Roll to put crack in the sack. Kills got traded rap for smack. Meaning loan, sugar, platinum, black. Whether see a million up for second, that is crap. If we bapping them back, we automatically stack. Right here, the band is gonna go hard. Y'all gonna go crazy. My God, I ain't rockin' with you. Know what you gonna do? My favorite music.